Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're actually gonna get our hands on some data. Sorry we didn't get to do that in the last episode, but like I said, if you watched that one, I kind of realized that I was getting a little too ahead of myself and needed to talk about why I think you should care about uh, data science anyway. But today I want to go ahead and play with some data. I've saved a few example data sets on my Patreon page, and after talking with some of my friends, one in particular, I'm hoping to have her on an episode pretty soon. I started to gain a little bit of understanding about where teachers tend to store their data in their schools, and what kind of software they use. And she mentioned that a lot of you probably use PowerTool or PowerSchool and another software called Illuminate. And from what I understand, I've been doing some research on them. They're sort of like a database management system. You enter your grades in there, and then your grades fly off away to some far away land and play around with Peter Pan. But more realistically, they send all of your students' grades over to a server, and they save the data in a bunch of different places, and then you probably have a database administrator that is in charge of making sure that all of that data is secure, and that whoever needs to have that data can have access to it whenever they need to. And there's a lot of ethics that goes into how you store data, especially whenever children are the subjects of the data. And that's something that I definitely want to talk about in the future. But for today, I want to just kind of set up a really simple version of, or a really simple episode, somewhat simple, about what data actually looks like without getting bogged down too much into all the database talk. We're going to have that talk eventually. We're going to have the birds and the bees discussion, um, because that's where all the data wrangling happens, and the data wrangling is just as important as any other process within the data science pipeline for teachers and for everyone. But I want to make this as painless and simple as possible. So what I did is I saved a few data sets on my Patreon page. So if you just open up your browser, whatever you're using, Firefox, Chrome, whatever else, and just search for Patreon, go to the Patreon page and click here, and then go up here to the search window, and then search for my Patreon page, which is The Business Goat. There it is. And if you scroll down, I went ahead and posted before I started recording this episode. There's three. These are Excel files right here, and I wanted to talk about these real quick. We're not actually going to get into R yet today. I'm going to try to make this episode relatively quick. I know I've been kind of long-winded so far, and I need to make these videos a little bit shorter, a little bit more bite-sized, but it's really important that we understand what data look like. And if you notice here, I put what data look and have the S in parentheses. Outside of data science people, I'm not sure how many people understand the word data is actually plural. And I'm sure if you go back and listen to some of my previous episodes and even the ones that I'm going to do in the future, a lot of the time I treat the word data as if it's singular too. But for the really hardcore data science folks, some of them will give you the stink eye if you don't treat data as an actual plural word, a plural noun. The singular version is datum or datum. But anyway, I just thought that'd be fun for the English teachers out there. But anyway, I try to always treat it as plural, but I don't always succeed. Um, but I want to talk about structured data. And so what I mean by structured data is there's this continuum, and there's argument about where the cutoffs are, but there's pretty much agreement about that there are three categories. There is unstructured data, there is semi-structured data, and there is structured data. Unstructured data is like if you go to, actually this web page is unstructured data. There's words, um, there are files. This is information, right? We need to think of the word data as somewhat synonymous with the word information. And there's a little bit of structure here, but everything's just kind of thrown around everywhere. We got a couple of files saved up here, and a few videos and an audio file. All of that is information, and it's really unstructured. What semi-structured data is is it's trying to get this information into something that has, a little bit of structure to it. And then what structured data is means that it's put into a nice, pretty, tidy little package that is ready to do whatever it is that you need to do with it. And what we want to do with our data is we want to feed it into R, the software package that we're going to be using for data science. And R, like I said, if you downloaded R already, at the very end of the video I say R is really picky. It wants everything to be really neat and tidy and exactly the way he wants it. So I'm going to give you a couple examples here of what semi-structured and structured data means. So for our purposes right now, we just need to understand that semi-structured data means that we have some information, some numbers and some names put into a little bit of a structured format, and then structured data for our purposes means that it is ready to be imported or fed into R so that R can have the data to do stuff with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click here on the semi-structured XLS file. That's an Excel file. If you don't have Excel, I'm going to hopefully post some more videos for people that have other spreadsheet software. But for now, I apologize. We're just going to have to go forward with the assumption that you have Excel on your computer. So if you click on this semi-structured link right here, you should see down here it'll start flashing once it's downloaded. So I'm going to click on it. And it opened over on my other screen, so I'm going to drag it over and click enable editing just so that I can make changes to it if I want to. And so what I've done here, I'm going to minimize this. What I've done here is I created this kind of fake little semi-structured data file, because this is something that I get from a lot of clients that I have, not a lot, but a fair amount of my clients. They organize information and data in a way that makes sense for them so that it makes their data clear to them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it would be clear to a computer software, but it makes sense to them. And so they there's structure here. They have, different students here. Lacey, Velvet, Cody, and Mark are all in Mr. or Mrs. whoever's English 2 5th period class, and then has the grades, they're structured. They have the first homework, second homework, and third homework all in a row, and then their final grade over here. And so this is kind of structured, right? It makes sense. You can if you wanted to, you can kind of look for patterns. Velvet's a little smarty pants, teacher's pet, so she's constantly getting 100s. Lacey's doing all right. She's improving with each assignment. Cody as well. He started a little bit lower, but he keeps getting better. And there's something wrong with Mark. He's having some issues, maybe. He probably needs a little bit of help. And then there's a little bit more structure to this, right? So she has these other tabs down here for her 6th period as well. And so we can click on that and look to see what this data looks like. And so this is for the 6th period English class. And so it's, there's structure here. Even color coordination and structuring your data in this way means that you are already working on a data science skill. You're trying to gather information about your world and put it into some sort of format or package, or tidy it up into a way that you can look at it and make decisions about it based upon what kind of patterns or other information that you're getting about the data. And so it can be helpful just to do this too, right? So we see that maybe there's a pattern between Brady and Dylan. When they're in class, they're doing pretty well, but maybe they're playing hooky together. It seems like when they're there, they do well, and when they're not there, not doing so well. And you could probably find some other patterns. Alexa started off hot, and now she's declining. Something's going on. This is useful. This can help you make sense of your data. This is a data science skill, and that's what I meant by the very first episode that I had, was that if you're even doing something like this, and I know not everybody's doing this, but even if you are doing something like this, you have a data science skill. And what I want to do is I want to help you turn this semi-structured data science data set into a structured data set that we can go put into an actual data science software that can do some really amazing things with it. And so What a structured data set looks like for R is a little bit different from this. Like we can't do, these color codes don't mean anything to R, and these blank columns, are very unhelpful for R. R is not going to like that at all. He's a robot, he's a machine. This doesn't make any sense to him. He just wants everything to follow very, very strict rules. So this data set's not going to be helpful for R, but that doesn't mean that the information that's in it wouldn't be helpful for R. So what I did was I went ahead and just made a couple of other structured data sets that are already ready to be fed into R, and I posted them in here. So let's go ahead and open this one. Just going to click on enable editing, so it's let me make changes if I want to. I'm going to go ahead and download the other one too, because I want to talk about them together. Which one's that one? The wide? Yeah, that was the wide one. And this is the long one. So we'll go ahead and download that one too. So just click on it and come down here and click on it again, and it'll open. Click on enable editing. You may not see that enable editing button up there. That just depends on the settings of your computer. So the last thing I want to talk about, because again, like I said, I know I've been kind of long-winded here, and these videos are going for too long. But R wants its data in something that looks like this. Either one of these will work for it. But I want to talk about this one first, because this sort of makes sense for both R and humans and us. We have our students here in a nice neat column, and then we have our first homework assignment right before our second homework assignment, and then we have their grades. And this is pretty clear to both a human and to a robot like R. We see that we have a student here, and Mandy, she didn't do so well in the first homework assignment, but she put the work in and improved on the second one. And we could even put functions or formulas in here to calculate the average of the class and the average for each student, and that would be helpful too. But R doesn't care about any of that. All R wants is it just wants everything to be in a very structured, well thought out column and a very structured, well thought out row. And columns are what R thinks of as variables. You may also hear more computer scientist type people talk about vectors and arrays, but I want to try to stay away from that kind of jargon. I'm going to try to keep the jargon to a minimum. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to completely eliminate it, but I want to keep it as low as possible. And we can use this data set. We can feed this right into R, and R will completely understand it, and it's like, all right, let's get to work. Let's do something with it. But it also understands this in a very different way than it understands this one. And depending on what you want to do with your data, it will influence which one of these data structures you really want to follow. And so this one is called a wide, so that's why I called it a wide data structure. And this should make sense. It's wide because we have each of our variables, or each of our different, metrics, each of our different assessments, our measures, are growing further and further to the right. They're getting wide like our waistline, right? They're growing outward. And long, the long format, you can see it's kind of the same. We have all of the same students, Mandy through Andy. I did not plan it that way. That's just the way it worked out. And so we see Mandy through Andy. But you see the columns over here are different. Here, I just call this homework 1 and homework 2. And I call this one score. You can call this something else if you wanted to, but basically this is the assessment metric. And then I have a column called homework, which is which one of these homeworks it is. And so you can see that for homework 1, it goes all the way down from Mandy to Andy, and then we start back over with Mandy again, and it moves over to homework 2. And so that's why it's long. So instead of growing wide from left to right, it's growing from top to bottom, so it's long. And it's not a perfect vernacular for what we might think, but it makes a little bit of sense, right? But the main thing that we need to understand is that we can't have sort of empty columns over here, and we can't have, empty rows across the top. R is going to be real nasty about that. It's not. He's gonna get angry and tell you that what are you doing, weirdo? Just put everything back the way I like it. It's got to be real structured. And that's going to be annoying for a lot of people. It's annoying for almost all of us the first time that we start trying to do analysis and data science, because ours going to yell in your ear and tell you, hey, you know how I want things to look, so make them look that way. And so that's why I wanted to provide these example data sets so that we don't have to get too bogged down in the beginning about all the data wrangling and data management. We are definitely going to have those talks, like I said, but I wanted to just kind of give you guys a peek into what real structured data looks like before we start playing around with R. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there because I want to get us to R, and I don't want any of these episodes to keep going over 15 minutes like this one now has. Um, like I always say, I believe in you. You can do this if you really want to do it. And now let's get to work.